As a policymaker, as part of the policy-making process in Washington, D.C., one of the things that you realize is that the corporate sector has a tremendous influence on Washington, D.C. They have millions of dollars that they spend on lobbyists to get the policies that they want. And in many ways, that is part of the problem that we have today. So you may remember something called the Gilded Age. The Gilded Age, the age of the robber barons. This is something that is a part of our history where you had very large industrial titans that were essentially fleecing the country. That's where a lot of our antitrust laws come from. So it actually turns out that while the Chinese were doing a good job at raiding our industrial base, there was a lot of things internally in the United States that were helping that process. Number one was the offshoring of manufacturing. So we're talking about inventions here. Well, it turns out that 75% of the invention process happens in the manufacturing process. Every time that you make an improvement in the manufacturing process actually is a big part of inventing. And if you don't do manufacturing, that's a significant toll on your intellectual property in a country. So all of this, ecosystem that grows up around manufacturing is also a big part of the problem. And the reason that we had allowed the Chinese Communist Party to come in and take our industries, our companies, our markets, was because we believed that if we allowed them to become wealthy like us, if they allowed them to have the innovation, the technology, the talent, and the capital of a free society, that as they got rich, as the people of the country got wealthy, they would embrace our principles, our values. They would become like us. And what I found in this almost 10 years now that I've been working on this is that rather than them becoming like us, we are slowly becoming like them. And in fact, what you see is a decline in our civil liberties, in our value of freedom and independence, freedom of speech. These are all parts of things that if you look up and if you do a Google search for something called document number 9, is a thing that the Chinese Communist Party actually fears the most. They fear that the Chinese people, the 1.4 billion Chinese, would somehow learn to understand and appreciate things like freedom of speech and freedom of religion and freedom from fear and freedom from want, which are things that we recognize as Americans, but is not what happens within China. So as time went on, I came to realize that not only were we losing our industries, but in many ways the world that we built after the end of the Cold War was accelerating this change in our society. What am I talking about here? Well, I don't have it because Stephanie has it, but my iPhone, the iPhone came out in 2007. And when that came out, the top 5 in market cap in the country, AT&T, General Electric, ExxonMobil, Shell, and Microsoft. 10 years later, in only 10 years, we had a complete change in the global economy. Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google, the FANGs became so a part of our economy that they represent 25% of the S&P 500. They exert such an outsized influence on our society that it's slowly begun to change the nature of our society. So today, in your device is this immense collection of data that happens every single day. And in fact, it happens on our military bases. It happens in the Pentagon. You can today draw a circle around any military base, and I can tell you what everybody's doing on that base just by freely available data that comes from software development kits and ad data. The data from ad sales. That data is incredibly valuable because why do these companies, the FANGs, represent 25% of the S&P 500? Because they learned how to monetize what they know about you. what is their business model? Their business model is basically selling their ability to influence your consumption decisions. In other words, they are selling their ability to influence the decisions you make about what you buy, what you look at, what you think about. Well, let's go back to the story about Kosovo and war and what it means and what it's for. It's about a political act, but you're using force. Well, that's the way we go to war. The Chinese don't go to war that way. And in fact, the way that the Chinese Communist Party won the civil war in China was not with weapons. They didn't fight a war. What they did was undermine the faith and confidence of the Chinese people in the government. They eroded the country from within. They eroded the popular support of the government, and eventually the Nationalist Party left. So primarily what Mao Zedong, who was the leader of the Chinese Communist Party, believed in was political warfare. Not we're going to use force to achieve a political outcome. We are going to do politics as a method of war. Okay, well that's fine in kind of the 20th century where that happens within the borders of China. But what did the Fangs build? They built a system, a mobile environment, a system for influencing people, not just in the United States, globally. That's why the Fangs are so powerful. They can influence across the world. Well, what does that mean for political independence and sovereignty? What does it mean to keeping your nation the way that it was intended when the world is connected globally with this global internet, where data can be collected and where your decisions can be influenced in ways that are counter to the way you want to live, the way you want to live your life? So what the Chinese Communist Party figured out was, well, Silicon Valley built this great engine for political warfare. They just didn't know it. They just thought they were building a system for selling you things. Well, the Chinese Communist Party realized, like, not only can we sell you things, we can begin to influence your social and political beliefs too. And we can do that subtly. It's not like 9/11 where it hits you in the gut and it kills people. That's not the way they go about it. It's about slowly changing your point of view. Now, people talk about TikTok. What is TikTok? TikTok, which goes with ByteDance. So TikTok is kind of the vacuum cleaner for data. ByteDance is the AI company that powers the way the TikTok algorithms work. If you go on TikTok today, you will find video after video of people basically singing the praises of the Chinese Communist Party and saying how their political and social and economic system is better for people than democracy. And in some ways they're right. They're right because of the way that we have allowed corporate power in the United States to basically accumulate. So how does this political warfare work in the United States? Okay, so policy. How does policy get made? Well, policy gets made, it's just the same thing with this America Invents Act. Same way it happened, I guarantee you. What happens is, I see it all the time, corporations have lobbyists. Lobbyists go to DC. The lobbyists will even write the laws for the congressman and then lobby to get them passed. That's what the corporations pay for. What do the Chinese want? Well, they want policy in the United States to enable them to continue to do the things that they're doing. So how does it work? Well, they go to these corporations and they say, if you toe the line with us, we will make sure that you have access to our markets in China. Right? So remember, I was there when China entered the WTO. I saw how much American corporations wanted to be in China. So the way that the Chinese influence our policy process is through our own corporations. The America Invents Act is a great way for the Chinese Communist Party to get technology without having to pay for it. And by the way, it's the same thing that U.S. corporations want. They want to get your ideas without having to pay for it. That's why we, again, went through things like antitrust and got through the Gilded Age with the robber barons. We're back in the age of the tech robber barons, except rather than just stealing your jobs, rather than just stealing your money, rather than just stealing your ideas, they're also stealing your country. And so there is a nexus between political warfare that's happening by China and certainly in conjunction with its partners like Russia and Iran and North Korea. They all practice it. They just don't have the throw weight of the Chinese in terms of industry and resources. And so, we created a national security strategy to go after this. The problem is the corporate sector has been fighting it. They don't want to protect the American people for the predations because they're incentivized by the Chinese to keep doing what they're doing. So what happens? The innovation, the technology, the talent, the capital, 40% of the investable capital of the world comes from the United States. Rather than going into American communities, it goes to China. And so does your innovation, and so does the technology, and by the way, so does the talent, because people realize that they can make more money over there working with them. So, I made it my life's work to basically talk about these problems, but also I'm doing something about it. So this American Invents Act also impacts me. I'm the CEO of a company called Semper. Semper stands for Secure EMP Resistant Edge. I became so concerned about the collection of our data and the use against our people, against our own interests, that I wanted to create infrastructure that secured data and protected critical infrastructure. So we've created EMP-hardened, encrypted, secure infrastructure for democracies. And we're deploying that both for the military today, and we're also beginning now to deploy it for commercial use. So our goal is to protect communities, to give them the tools to have things like advanced manufacturing by giving them the sort of not just broadband connectivity in communities, but also the ability to have high performance computing, so that you can have things like advanced manufacturing in rural communities, which is something that we don't have today. But in addition to doing that, we wrote a nice patent, and it's an 800-page patent that we wrote for our architecture. And my hardware CTO, who comes from the Cray, high-performance computing platform, so he was a protege of Seymour Cray, has it on his own 27 patents. He's overseen 48 patents, and he's gone through 6 IPRs. And in that process, not a single one of them has been upheld. In fact, 85% of patents don't get upheld because of the America Invents Act. And also, he has basically become absolutely critical of the U.S. patent system. In fact, when we talk about patents, he says, don't even waste some money. You pay $50,000 for a patent, and the corporations can go and wipe it out. In fact, in one of the IPRs, there was a guy that never upheld a patent. So this is a big problem for America. It's just one of the many problems that I talk about in my book. One of which is the fact that we have no infrastructure. Our infrastructure is falling apart. I already mentioned we don't have manufacturing. We no longer invest in science and technology. And then if you're an innovator and you don't get to protect your ideas, then that's really destroying kind of the fabric of who we are as a people. So I really appreciate what you're doing. I wore the uniform for almost 30 years of my life. I raised my right hand and I swore an oath to the Constitution. I still feel that way, but I took the uniform off because I could see that the things that I was doing was not making a difference. That's why I left. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm an inventor. I'm a CEO of a company that wants to do things here in America for Americans and other democracies, and we need to invest in rebuilding this country, and this is one of the most important things that we could do. So thank you for allowing me to come and talk.